with some testimony on microstamping.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. My name is Jake William, Director of Government Relations from the National Shooting Sports Foundation. I am here to speak in opposition to H1561, firearms microstamping. Just some quick background: the National Shooting Sports Foundation is the trade association for America's firearms industry. Manufacturing members make the firearms used by Massachusetts sportsmen, the U.S. military, and law enforcement agencies throughout the Commonwealth. There is no rational basis upon which to justify the enactment of this proposed legislation. With all due respect to Representative Linsky, he had stated that earlier that New York enacted the law. He did correct himself later on. The State Assembly has simply passed microstamping in New York. It has not passed the Senate and will not pass the Senate in Albany. Microstamping has been defeated in Wisconsin, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Virginia. The only state to pass microstamping in the U.S. has been California, which passed it 3 years ago. It has not been enacted in the state. The way the legislation was written in California, it said that it had to be unencumbered by any patents, and the patent holder has not released any of those patents in the state nationwide. He's actually based right here in New Hampshire. I'm surprised not to see him here today. So the Attorney General has not certified that that technology is unencumbered in Massachusetts. Secondly, on the cost standpoint, Representative said it would be $7 per firearm. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed with any of the manufacturers here in Massachusetts, such as Smith & Wesson and Carr Arms, which, based upon the handout I gave you, the firearms industry in the state contributes over 5,000 jobs to the state of Massachusetts, with an economic impact of $1.1 billion. So you may want to think about that, and then the state taxes are close to $71 million to the state dealing with the firearms industry. Smith & Wesson and Carr Arms directly employ over 1,200 employees here in the state of Massachusetts. And this legislation would directly impact them by cutting jobs, by forcing them possibly to move out of the state based upon having to implement this flawed concept in this quote-unquote technology. Also, just so you know, there is a federal study, there is federal legislation in D.C. to look at microstamping, to study microstamping in the long term. So that is out there. It has not passed in D.C. yet, but it is out there to study how it can be implemented and if it actually works. Based upon the National Shooting Sports Foundation, we do not oppose it because it's gun control. We simply support further study of it, but it's very similar to the National Fraternal Order of Police, the ATF, and the National Research Council. They feel it is not ready for prime time. It does not work, and as been stated before, it is easily defeated. Criminals are not going to be purchasing their guns through legal means. They are getting them through the black market, and even if they did get a firearm through legal means, they'll simply swap out the firing pin, which is a process that takes less than a minute to swap it out, or to file down the firing pin. You can file it down to get rid of the characters. You're going to hear supporters state that it's there's various encumbrance to file it down, and there's safety and security standards, so that it can't be filed down, but it has not been proven in technology independent studies. Based upon my written testimony I've given you, there have been 3 studies to prove that microstamping does not work and is easily defeated. The University of California, Davis completed a study. George Cravasto, who is actually a tool mark examiner down in Nassau County on Long Island, and then also the National Research Council. They were actually looking at ballistics imaging, database ballistic imaging, and came to the conclusion that that didn't work because law-abiding citizens putting their firearms or their casings in a database are not committing crimes. So they were actually looking at ballistics imaging, but they did also say that microstamping needs to be the cost implications need to be looked at, and the feasibility also of the technology needs to be looked at, and how it's going to impact the manufacturing process. So that's basically all the background, a quick rundown. Everything else is contained in my written testimony I gave you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it. I've been all across the country trying to stop microstamping legislation. Has been successful in all the states. Like I said, California is the only one to enact it, but have not certified it ready for prime time or certified that it's ready to go. Thank you.
If it's okay with the chairs, I'll just run down a few of the bills and we can kind of move on to some of the other people in the room. There are a number of pepper spray bills in the package today that's before the committee, and certainly Governor Zach and we would love to work with the committee to get something out. I know we got something out last year, it just didn't move. We've been trying to get rid of the pepper spray license now since 1998 when it was enacted. I'm fairly certain we're still the only state in the nation that licenses a spice. So I think we can probably do without that. If any of you have ever been to Arizona or Texas and had some of their chili, there's definitely things down there that should be licensed. So I'd be glad to work with the committee on that, and hopefully we can get some closure on that this year. Also, House 2404, an act relative to report firearm statistics. This is another bill I think is very important for the state of Massachusetts to really get a grasp on whether things are working or not. Unfortunately, we already know they're not, but we need to know specifically why they're not. Getting into some of the bills that we certainly oppose, I'll just touch on a few of them. I have written testimony for the committee to signal time. One is House 639, an act to close automatic weapons loophole. The title is a little bit disingenuous since it really has nothing to do with automatic weapons. It actually has to do with the assault weapons laws here in Massachusetts. And the way the bill is written, it would actually tend to make any mechanical action, firearm like a lever action, a pump action, a bolt action, rifle or shotgun, would make that an assault weapon and then tend to ban them. In the previous assault weapons laws, it was not a loophole, it was specifically put in the law that would exempt these items that were manufactured prior to 1994, but also specifically in the federal law, which is now permanently attached to Massachusetts law, Appendix A of 18 U.S.C. Section 922, was an enormous list of guns that could never be considered assault weapons. And this bill would actually undo that and take away that list of almost 700 individual firearms. Some of them single-shot Olympic-style pistols would now be considered assault weapons because they have a mechanical action. And certainly gun owners actually is opposed to that. House 2916, again, supposed another loophole in the law. I find it hard to believe that something can be considered a loophole when it was specifically written into the law itself. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a way for somebody to find something around something. It was a specific date that the legislature put in the law that if things were manufactured or lawfully possessed prior to a certain date, that they were fine to possess, to transfer, whatever in the state of Massachusetts. And again, we'd be opposed to that. Now, one of the other problems we're facing with this, again, is not directly related to the legislation, but certainly the trust that we have in our own state agencies to deal with this is just a few weeks ago, the Department of Public Safety put out a letter to all of our licensed gun dealers, an advisory letter about so-called the assault weapons law. Everything in that letter was factually incorrect. So how can we trust the enforcement agency to handle even more responsibility when they're tasked with a mission now and they have failed greatly on that mission? They have actually caused a huge legal snafu across the state because they gave out such factually incorrect information that even law enforcement officers are pretty much scared as to what they can and can't own. And when our law enforcement officers are facing up to 10 years in jail for simply possessing a magazine that might have been made after a certain date because of somebody's interpretation of the law inside an agency, we are certainly in trouble as a state, and we need to fix that issue. Also, Senate 1195, an act regarding the prevention of illegal trafficking. Basically, this bill would shut down licensed gun dealers in the state of Massachusetts. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but the way the bill is written, it would only allow licensed firearms retailers to sell 15 guns a year, and then they have to stop selling for the rest of the year. There's also a whole lot of piling on and just general gun law in this bill, but that one section obviously states its purpose is to shut down the lawful retailers in the state of Massachusetts. One other bill that has been around for a long time, an act